Hi everyone. Welcome you all for this construction practice video lecture. I am Sudhindra, working as a lecturer in Government Polytechnic, Bagalkot. Today we'll discuss the experiment number 3, setting out a center line for a small building and estimating the quantity of earthwork by long wall short wall method and center line method. In this session, we are going to discuss introduction, tools required for the setting out and setting out procedure, calculation of earthwork by long wall short wall method, and calculation of earthwork by center line method. Introduction. Setting out is a process of orientation of building and transferring of the center line of the walls and foundation onto the ground. In this process, the outer line of structural elements like wall foundation and column are marked on the ground so as to proceed for the excavation. As the setting out is a basic and fundamental part of the construction project, so you should take care of the accuracy. Once the setting out is done and all columns, wall foundations are marked and constructed, in later case it is very difficult to change the locations of the foundation and columns. So the attention has to be given for the accuracy of the setting out. The IS code 11134 1984 shall be referred for the permissible deviations in measurement and guidance how inaccuracies can be controlled. The aim of the setting out of building is to transfer the center line of the building onto the ground and calculate the earthwork quantity by long wall short wall and center line method. To carry out the experiment, the following tools are required: the steel tapes, measuring tape, plumb bob, water tube level, Mason square to set out the right angle, spirit level to check the level of the line, straight edge, strings and wooden pegs to tie the string, and white stone dust or a lime powder for marking the outer edge of the excavation. Setting out procedure. In the first step, the site has to be cleared properly, all obstructions has to be removed and ground is fairly leveled so as to achieve the accuracy in setting out work. Step number 2. Obtain the centerline drawing along with the architectural and structural drawing and establish the grid lines or the center lines and the controlling points like all corners, offset from the boundary lines or offset from the roads are also marked on the setting out drawing. Here you can see the setting out drawing. In this drawing, all grid lines are marked 1, 2, 3, A, B, C are the grid lines, vertical and horizontal grid lines, and distance between these grid lines are also shown in the drawing. Then the diagonal length is calculated by Pythagoras theorem and both diagonals should be checked at the end. The control points or the offset of the building, outer line of the building from the boundary line is also marked here, and the offset from the road is also marked here. To start with any corner, these offset has to be marked, the corner point has to be marked by referring the offset from building bylaws. To start with setting out, the longest wall has taken as a baseline. In this plan, the line or grid line 1, that is a point P and Q, are taken as a baseline. This baseline is marked on the ground by leaving a proper setback distance here with 1.5 meter setback plus the center line length. The center of the grid line is calculated from the boundary line, that is 1.5 meter plus 0.3 by 2, that will comes around 1.65 meter, and that distance is taken to the grid lines 1 and from the side boundary, and this baseline PQ is marked properly. Then in next step, the grid line C is marked perpendicular to the grid 1 by taking a Mason square, then checking with a 3-4-5 method. When the rectangle is precisely set, mark the next point R by measuring the center distance. Like this, the grid line 3 is also marked, and the grid line A is also marked on the ground. When marking the outer center lines of the building is over, then we need to check the diagonals of a building, that is PR and QS diagonals. Both diagonals shall be equal in length. If they are not in equal, you need to repeat the procedure again. When the all boundary lines, outer grid lines are marked, then intermediate grid lines, wall center lines are marked by measuring the distance between each grids. In this case, the vertical grid 2 and horizontal grid B can be measured after the outer grids are marked and checked for the diagonals. After marking all center line, the outer edge of the excavation for the wall foundation is marked on the ground by taking the offset from the center line. If the width of the excavation is 0.9 meter and the offset of excavation from the center line will be 0.9 by 2, that will be 0.45 meter. Here we can see at the grid 3, we have taken 50 mm on the either side, and string is stretched between the outer lines of the excavation. Then these outer lines of the excavations are marked by using white chalk powder, lime powder. Once all outer line of a foundation walls are marked, the grid pillars or the center lines has to be secured. Grid pillars has to be secured. Those grid pillars has to be located 2 meter, at least 2 meter away from the excavation edge, so as to avoid the disturbance to the grid lines. These grid pillars are required for the further reference for the further construction in masonry or during a plinth walls and all. So these grid pillars are constructed by brick, and at the top the plaster is made and the center line is marked. Usually the grid pillars will be of 50 mm into 50 mm in size, and the height of the grid pillars or the level of the top of the grid pillars will be equal to the level of the plinth. After the outlines of the excavation is marked, the excavation is carried out up to a required depth, and then the bed concreting, side stone masonry, and for the superstructure brickwork, these grid lines are referred. Now we'll see how to calculate the earthwork quantity by long wall short wall method. We'll look at the drawing now. Here the walls on grid 1, 2 and 3 are taken as a long wall, and the distance between the long wall is calculated. The grid distance between the grids are also given here. Now we have calculated the grid distance, that is 4.3 plus 4.3 will give you the centerline length of the long wall, that is 8.6 meters. The center line of long wall for all walls on the 1, 2, 3 have a same length. Then the length of the short wall perpendicular to these long walls, that is the walls on grid A, B and C are considered as a short walls. There are three short walls in between grid 1 and 2, and three more short walls will come in between the grid number 2 and 3. So the total short walls will be 6, and all short walls will have a in this case all short walls are having the same center line distance, that is 4.3 meter. When the center line length of long wall and short wall is calculated, the length of the long wall is calculated by center to center distance plus half of the width on the item on the either side. The walls of grid ABC are taken as short walls that we have seen there, and length of short wall will be equal to center to center distance minus half of the width of the item on the either side. Now we'll look at the tabulation of these lengths in a measurement sheet. Long wall length is equal to 8.6 meter center to center distance plus half of the width of the excavation, that is 0.90 by 2 plus half of the width of the excavation on the other side, 0.90 by 2. It will come around 9.50 meter. Then there were three long walls were there, 9.5 meter length, and width will be equal to 0.90 meter, and depth of the excavation 1.05 meter. And this width and depth of the excavation can be read from the sectional drawing. Here you can see the cross section of a foundation. Here they have given width of the bed concrete, that is 0.9 meter, 900 mm is the width of the excavation, and depth of the excavation we need to add the depth of stone masonry plus thickness of the bed concrete, that is 900 mm plus 150 mm. It comes around 1.05 meter will be the depth of the excavation. Now we have seen the width and depth from the excavation cross section of the foundation. Now we have to multiply all this length, width, depth and number of walls, and we'll get 26.93 as a quantity of earthwork of long walls. In the same manner, the short wall 4.3 meter center to center distance minus half of the width of the excavation, that is 0.90 divided by 2 minus 0.90 divided by 2, it comes around 4.3 meter, and 6 short walls are there, so 6 numbers. Length is 3.4 meter, width of excavation 0.9 and depth is 1.05, and the quantity is 19.28. And when the all walls are calculated, earthwork for the all walls is calculated, then you can add it and we'll get a total quantity of earthwork 46.21 cubic meter. Now the calculation of earthwork by using centerline method. In the centerline method, we need to add the centerline length of all walls together to get a gross centerline length. Here we have 3 long walls of 8.6 meter plus 6 short walls of 4.3 meters. So when you add this centerline length of the all walls, we'll get a 51.6 meter. And number of junctions, there are 6 number of junctions are there in the drawing. We can refer drawing for the number of junctions. Here we can count the number of junctions. At the grid B, we have 2 junctions at the outer walls, and grid 2 at the outer walls we have 2 junctions. At the outer walls we have 4 junctions, and at the center where the 2 walls are meeting at the center we have 2 more junctions. So the total number of junctions are 6. The centerline length will be equal to total centerline length of all walls minus half width of the item into number of junctions. Here in our case, the total centerline length is 51.6 meter minus half into width of the item is 0.9 meter, and the number of junctions are 6. So here we'll calculate the centerline length, 51.6 minus half into 0.9 into 6, it will be 48.9, and all center lines are added together, so the number will be 1, and the centerline length will be 48.9 meter, width of the excavation is 0.9 meter, and depth of the excavation is 1.05 meter. and when you multiply all this, we'll get a quantity of earthwork in cubic meter, that is 46.21, and the total quantity is 46.21. When you look at the quantity what we have calculated in the long wall short wall method, that is also 46.21. Is it right? So far we have discussed the definition of setting out, what is a setting out, and what are the care should be taken while setting out a building, what is a code to be referred for elimination of errors in setting out, and what are the tools required for setting out work, and what is the procedure to carry out the setting out on the ground, and how to calculate the quantity of earthwork by both the methods, that is long wall short wall method and center line method. Okay, let us go to site and we'll set out a building on the ground. First step is site clearance and making a site fairly leveled to achieve accuracy in setting out. Tools and equipments required for setting out are wooden pegs, mason square, arrows, nails, strings, plumber, lime powder, and auto level with stop to ensure wooden pegs and marking pillars are at the same height. Refer the setting out drawing and set out the center line of the longest wall. In the setting out drawing, we need to refer it for the front setback and side setback so that the longest wall grid, that is grid number 1, is set out by leaving the appropriate setback distance. Then the site boundary should be established. All 4 corners of the sites are located properly, and these corner points will be used for referring a setting out of the building further. The setback distance is measured from the site boundary, and the left setback from the boundary is 1.65 meter is measured, and the longest wall center line, that is a grid line 1, is set out. Now the offset is 1.6 meter, 1.65 meter is left at the left side of the building. In next step, the point P is located at a front setback of 4.75 meter from the road boundary. The front setback is left measuring 4.75 meter to the center of the grid A, and then the wooden peg is driven and nail is secured at the top. Then the second point or a second corner of the building Q is marked on the grid line 1 by measuring 8.6 meter from point P, and the wooden peg is driven at a point Q at a distance of 8.6 meter, and nail is secured at the top. At point Q, the perpendicular line, that is the grid line 3, is set out by using the mason square. Then the right angle of the corner Q is checked by using 3-4-5 method using tapes. to ensure the proper right angle at a corner Q. In this way, the grid line C, which is perpendicular to the baseline, is established by 3, 4, 5 method. Now we can see here the diagonal 5 meter is exactly meeting at a 4 meter distance. The point R is marked on the grid C by measuring a distance of 8.6 meter from Q, and the peg is driven at a third point R, and at the top the nail is secured. Then again the measurement of 8.6 meter checked once again, and at a point R, at the corner R, again the perpendicular line is set out to establish a third grid line, grid number 3, at point R by using Meson square, and the same right angle is checked by 3, 4, 5 method using tape. When the right angle is ensured at the corner R, we can go further to mark a point S on grid line 3. The right angles are very important to achieve a greater accuracy in setting out. On the grid line C, the point SC is located by measuring 8.6 meter as given in the setting out drawing from point R. The RS is measured 8.6 meter, and at a point S, the wooden peg is driven and nail is secured. Then the distance from point P to S is also checked once again. If all right angles are correct, then the distance measured will also be. When the setting out of the outer grid lines are done, to ensure that the all corners are at right angle, the diagonals are measured. Both the diagonals, diagonal PR and QS, are measured. Both diagonals should measure equally. The diagonal distance should be 12.16 meter, and the other diagonal, we'll check other diagonal also. That diagonal should also measure 12.16 meter. Both diagonals, when both diagonals are in equal length, it shows that the all corners what we have set out are at a proper right angle. After this, the all grid pillars to be constructed 2 meters away from the outer excavation line should be at the same level of the plinth. So the top level of the pillars are kept at the top level of the plinth, and all the wooden pegs should also be at the same level. To ensure the proper level, the auto level is used to check the top levels of pillars to be constructed and the wooden pegs which are driven at the corner. All top levels of the wooden pegs are checked, and the top level of the grid pillars are also checked. After all grid lines are established and grid lines are tied properly and checked properly, the outer excavation, edge of the excavation are marked by lime powder, and the excavation width from the center line is marked on the ground. The half of the excavation width on the either side of the center line is marked. That is, the width of the excavation bed is 0.9 meter, so 0.45 meter on either side is marked by the lime powder. Like this, at all corners, the width of the foundation on the either side 0.45 meter, 0.45 meters are marked. Then the string is stretched between the outer lines of the excavation. The lime powder is put along the string. The marking of a center line and setting out of a building or positioning of the column is a fundamental activity for the building construction. If anything goes wrong, that may deviate the construction or position of the columns and buildings in later case. So the great importance, the attention has to be given to achieve accuracy in the setting out. When all outer lines of the excavation boundary is marked by the lime powder, the setting out is checked by the other person to ensure the accuracy. The other person has to check the setting out work. After that, the site is ready for the excavation. The care should be taken to minimize the errors and to increase the accuracy. Once the setting out is checked by the other person for the accuracy, the earthwork excavation can be done. Almost we have completed the setting out here. Then we can go for the excavation for the foundation. This is how the setting out of a small building is carried out at the site. The excavation, you can proceed for the excavation. The exact width and depth of the excavation the earth has to be excavated for the exact width and depth of the excavation. This completes the experiment number 3, setting out of a small building and calculation of earthwork quantity by long wall short wall method. Thank you for watching online video.